This story begins in a cemetery on the outskirts of the capital. Gerald, the king of mercenaries, told Hylia that she did not belong here. He then asked her if she understood where she was. They say that any order can be fulfilled here, but the more dangerous the case, the higher the price. Suddenly, Hylia asks Gerald to marry her. She asks him to kidnap her on her wedding day and then become her husband. Obviously, Gerald thought it was all nonsense. This is a mercenary guild, not a marriage place. Hylia knows that everyone fears the formidable Black Squad. She knows who Gerald really is. He is the crown prince who left the palace long ago, a man with a merciless disposition, ready to cut off anyone's head. It is surprising that, even though she understands who he is, Hylia still asks him to take her as his wife. Immediately after the kidnapping, they will sign a marriage contract. Gerald thinks she's joking, and he's wasting his time. If Hylia said one more word, he would kill her. She became scared, because he really could kill her. But he has no choice but to listen to her, because otherwise Gerald will die. In her past life, the heroine's name was Yu Shin-ah, and she was reincarnated as Hylia. At first, it was difficult to get used to the new environment. But life after rebirth turned out to be worthy. She got married. Everything was fine until she found out he was cheating on her. Hylia herself was accused of betraying her husband, and then of treason. She was killed, and then her second life began in Hylia's body. This return in time brought only chaos. Someone framed Hylia. One day, her husband asked her if everything was okay. The events repeated themselves, and the same woman took her husband away from her. Hylia tried to resist, but came to the same end. This time, Hylia escaped, but she was caught, and those who helped her died with her. Standing on the threshold of her third death, she smiled bitterly. Hylia desperately tried to survive, but the outcome was always the same. It's as if someone knows her every move. In the distance, she noticed a certain Evangeline Ruth, the same woman who took her husband away from her every time. She said that now everything belonged to her. Hylia was surprised when she heard her call her the main character of the novel. Once again, after death, Hylia woke up. She doesn't like how many times this girl and this bastard have led her by the nose. The thing is that Evangelina is a time traveler, and she knows the plot of the novel. Unlike her, who knew the future, Hylia had no idea that she lived in a book. Hylia can't be sure that she is the main character of the novel. If you think about it, everything came too easy for Evangeline. Not only love, but all the strongest people in this world were at her feet. This is how she eventually received the title of Crown Princess. And each time, Hylia shamefully disappeared from the pages of this story. Previously, she tried not to interfere with anyone, but because of her weakness, her people died. Although Hylia doesn't know the plot, she does have experience of past lives. It will probably contain details that are not mentioned in the book. There is little time left before the wedding, and her fiancé's heart probably already belongs to Evangelina. That's why Hylia wants to choose another husband for herself. The man who was Hylia's husband was Ludwig Kjern, Grand Duke. His ambitions are so great that he entered into a loveless marriage for the sake of money. He was so obsessed with Hylia that he always demanded her presence nearby. To get revenge on him and Evangeline, something needs to be done. Stepping out onto the balcony, Hylia suddenly screamed loudly. Ludwig felt uneasy when he heard the noise. He doesn't understand why Hylia suddenly doesn't want to wear a wedding dress. Their wedding is tomorrow, and she herself said how much she likes it. Eva asks him to calm down, because they shouldn't quarrel. All brides start to feel nervous before the wedding. Hylia will never wear the dress she has prepared. In her first life, she put it on in complete ignorance. She didn't even notice how Ludwig's initials were embroidered on this dress. Eva told her that she was a nuisance to this world. Eva is the daughter of the current empress. No one behaves the way she does with someone else's fiancé. Hylia said someone had embroidered someone else's initials on his wedding dress. But Ludwig knows that it is common practice to embroider the initials of the bride and groom. All fittings took place at Dolphin's house. Evangelina looked after the dress herself. The letters L and E are embroidered there, not X, as it should be. The one who envies their union did this. Hylia assumed that someone was deliberately trying to ruin their wedding. For example, the woman who hates her the most. But Ludwig asked if she herself believed this nonsense. Their marriage was approved by His Majesty. Ludwig understands her resentment, but hopes that she will not go against the emperor. They have time to sew a new outfit. Hylia would never wear a dress with someone else's initials on it. Ludwig shouts that it is dangerous there and asks Hylia to come down. Hylia would rather throw herself down than wear this dirty dress. She wonders what Ludwig will do now. It is not in his interests to ignore Hylia now. Hylia's wedding dress was set on fire. Ludwig says there's no need to worry about it. Whoever is behind this meanness will not allow them to ruin their wedding. Hylia descended, knowing he would side with her. She asked how she would go tomorrow without a dress. Ludwig asked Eva if she had any clothes. There is a dress that the emperor gave her for her birthday. It will do just fine, and Hylia will wear it. Hylia never thought she would take her gift. This should have been done a long time ago. The maids probably knew everything about the initials. They pretended they didn't know anything. The engagement ring is adorned with 3 purple diamonds. The 3rd diamond has lost its shine, and Hylia will never be free again. She understands that this is her last chance. Annie came to see her to see if everything was okay. The maid noticed that Hylia's eyes were swollen. She assures her that everything is fine and thanks Annie for her work. Annie is the daughter of Hylia's wet nurse. Hylia promises her mentally that he will save her in this life. Annie said the initials on the dress belonged to the Marchioness's daughter, Ruth. It's impudent to embroider the name of a girl who constantly hangs around someone else's fiancé. Annie has said more than once how suspicious Eva is. In the study, Hylia met with Sir Renus Beitlin, a knight of the house. He was the one who helped Hylia in her past life. He apologized for the sudden visit, but he had important business. Renus knows she won't want to listen to him, but it's for her own good. He said that Ludwig was marrying her not for love, but for power. So Renus asks Hylia to change her mind while there is still time. In her past lives, Renus was by her side until the very end. Renus begs her to think for her own good. But Hylia knows that Ludwig will never break the contract. Renus is the one who cherishes Hylia, always staying close. It's a pity that Hylia realized this too late. She asked him to accompany her somewhere at night. Hylia trusts him, that's why she asked him to accompany her. Suddenly, they both heard familiar voices. Eva asked Ludwig how he dared to give Hylia her dress. But this would not have happened if she had not embroidered her initials on someone else's dress. To confront the crown prince, Ludwig needs all the help of the Delphine clan. Eva only put up with all this because they needed their family. Ludwig asks not to torment him, since she understands everything. Evangelina got angry and slapped him. Realizing her actions, she immediately began to apologize. Ludwig asks her to return and not to dare show up at the ceremony tomorrow. And if she tries to ruin everything, he won't be so merciful anymore. There is already a crack in their relationship. In their past lives, they couldn't live a day without each other. Renus apologizes for his impudence. He just thought he saw Hylia trembling. He is genuinely afraid that her heart is broken. Hylia is no longer going to retreat because of her stupidity, and she will not close her eyes to reality. In this life, she will win Prince Arpad over to her side. Arpad, whose blood is as strong as the Emperor's, has completely lost his mind. The Emperor, not trusting his son, places his nephew Ludwig on the throne. To counter this, Arpad hides in the catacombs and acts under the name of King Gerald. In the future, he always dies at the hands of his own father. That's why she told him that he would die if he didn't help her. He won't be able to refuse her offer. If the mercenary king accepts Helia's order, Crown Prince Arpad will ascend to the throne with his sanity intact. But if the Emperor finds out about his double life, his life will be in danger. Hylia speaks as if Arpad has something to hide. It seems that they are beginning to understand each other. But suddenly, Arpad's gaze changed. He can't stand those who try to manipulate him. All this talk sounds too presumptuous. Hylia doesn't realize she's hit his weak spot. She couldn't imagine that Arpad would be so angry. But she can't give up so easily. So she tells him that she is not afraid of death. She told him that he would regret killing her. Arpad had never heard that Duke Delphine's daughter was suffering from madness. But in Hylia's veins flows only ordinary human blood. Arpad asked how she was going to extract the madman standing in front of her, but she is not going to reveal her secret behind her pretty eyes. If she tells everything, he will get rid of her immediately. Arpal could kidnap her and torture her in the dungeon until she tells. Of course, he is not going to give up so easily. He thought Hylia had come here unprepared. She foresaw all possible events. If she does not return to the mansion at the appointed time, all information about Arpad will end up in the hands of his enemies. So there is no point for Arpad to kill the Hylia. But Arpad doesn't understand why he should believe her. It's time to offer him a carrot. Hylia will give him something as a prepayment for the order. Arpad swears that if this is some kind of trick, he will cut her head off. These are the tears of Agrippina, one of the 5 sacred stones. If he accepts this order, Hylia will reveal the secret of the other's whereabouts. But Arpad, the crown prince, is not going to fall for such a thing. But this is one of the holy stones that they have been hunting for years. And there is something Arpad doesn't know. None of these stones will help Arpad to tame his madness. He will only learn the true way of healing through Hylia. Arpad is curious about how she will ultimately pay back. Hylia has already said that she will help you ascend to the throne while maintaining your sanity. If she's trying to lure him into a political trap, she won't get out alive. Arpad will only find out everything after he accepts her order. Hylia has already pre-ordered, and now the choice is up to Arpad. This is the most ridiculous order in his life. His Highness's servants watched the bloody moon from the window. When Arpad returned, they were surprised how early he was. But Arpad is only returning to his own home. Perhaps they are afraid that he will fly into a rage and slit their throats. But that's not what the servants meant at all. Almost no one knows that on the day of the blood moon, he descends into the catacombs to suppress madness. But Hylia has information about the mercenary king and the crown prince. Trusting in the goddess's blessing, this humble servant will forgive. Let her will serve as proof of Helia's words. And if she lies, she agrees to lose her hand. Arpad is obliged to protect Hylia from Ludwig. It was simply impossible to refuse this request. The day had arrived that Kalilia so desperately did not want to live through again. Ludwig asked her how she intended to fulfill her duties as Grand Duchess. Plus he asked where the wound on her neck came from. Hylia lies that a spy entered her chambers at dawn. When she opened her eyes, someone was already pressing a blade to her throat. But Louis knows that the guard was doubled yesterday. Hylia could not have done such harm to herself. She had already told him that someone secretly in love with him wanted to prevent their union. By the way, she herself called him countless times that night. Louis said that it was time for her to learn to watch her language. He doesn't want her to bother him with her nonsense today. It won't make Hylia feel any better if she keeps acting up. His Majesty the Emperor appeared on the threshold. He asks in a rage what is happening here. His appearance is the reason why Hylia continued to provoke Louis. Hylia remembers from past lives that the Emperor came to them in the morning, and now he is in disarray because of the scene Louis created. Louis tries to explain that this is just a misunderstanding. The Emperor cannot believe that he is now raising his hand against his bride. His Majesty is extremely disappointed in Louis. He knows better than anyone that it was the Emperor who initiated their union. If Louis disappoints him again, he will have to find a replacement. That's all. Now all that remains is to wait for Hylia to be kidnapped. People congratulate Hylia, telling her that she will be a wonderful wife. But all these congratulations sound like curses to her. She wonders where the crown prince is. They agreed to meet at noon. It's really ridiculous that some woman would suddenly ask him to kidnap her and marry her. Perhaps Arpad had doubts and decided to leave her. But as soon as she thought about him, he showed up. Nobody expected to see him as a guest at the wedding. They ask him why he is here. He has urgent business to attend to. Therefore, he asks not to disturb him and to stand still. The knights have no right to block his path, but they must find out what he wants. When he asked about Hylia, they realized something was wrong. Arpad did not stand on ceremony and wait. He made it clear that they should stand still. It seemed to the people that the crown prince's madness had flared up again. Hylia appeared and greeted His Highness. She pretends and says that she doesn't know why he's here. The guests were almost speechless when he removed her veil. Renus said that he had no right to remove the veil. He asked how he could inflict such a grave insult on a noble lady. Whatever Arpad's intentions, this is an attack on the honor of the Delphin family. People were shocked that he pointed a sword at the crown prince. Hylia asks the crown prince to show mercy. Arpad thought that she had come to the meeting on purpose to make it easier for him to kidnap her, and it's not difficult for him to play along with her. Now he plays the crown prince, who commits a violent bride kidnapping. Renus assures Hylia that he is fine, but he is bleeding profusely, and Hylia asks the crown prince to stop. Arpad noticed that she was not pretending at all. Hylia is genuinely worried about this knight. It seems that this knight is devoted to her with all his soul. The knight's fault is the lady's fault. She herself said that she was ready to pay for his misdeeds. Arpad grabs Hylia in his arms, which she didn't expect. She owed him as much as Renus's life was worth, and Hylia will definitely pay him for this. Thanks to Renus's assistance, Arpad clarified everything he wanted. He became convinced that such a woman was too valuable a trophy for some Ludwig. The atonement for the torn veil will be that her husband will be Arpad. Hylia screams and asks him to let her go so that people will believe. Bride kidnapping is a custom that was once recognized in the Empire. It is considered natural after a fierce dragon kidnapped a princess. And now the crown prince, rumored to have dragon blood in his veins, has kidnapped the bride. News of the bride's abduction reaches the emperor. Ludwig was supposed to be the groom because the emperor arranged it. Ludwig is furious that someone dared to go against the will of the emperor. Ava asks him to calm down. Many people are looking at them. Either way, they couldn't do anything. They were informed that Hylia had been stolen by His Highness, the Crown Prince. Ludwig went to an audience with His Majesty and asked to be admitted. But the emperor asked not to let anyone in, as he was currently holding an urgent meeting. They are probably discussing how to hush up the incident to their own advantage. So Ludwig cries out for His Majesty to restore justice. His heart bleeds with resentment. Queen Isabel asks what the emperor intends to do. There are already rumors that the duke's marriage is broken. Isabel wondered if Arpad's madness had helped him. She had this scar since the first time Arpad showed aggression. She decided to mention the late empress, but the emperor would not tolerate it. Isabel apologized for her frivolity. This is her only empress who left them. Arpad was like a mark on her cheek, left behind. 3 days have passed since the crown prince kidnapped Hylia. They finally reached the outskirts of the capital. Hylia's attitude towards bride kidnapping was negative, but she had no choice. This is an ideal way to remind people of the origins of the state's founding. In one of his past lives, Ludwig deliberately arranged for Hylia to be kidnapped in order to marry Eva. He became the heir after Arpad's death, using the myth of the founding of the empire. This time, Hylia decided to turn his tactics against him. It's time to discuss their next steps with Arpad. Noticing his gloomy appearance, she assumed he was tired. Maybe he's not in the mood because of the 3-day journey. They are already near the capital, so they can slow down a little, but they don't know when they will be chased. Soon they found themselves at the imperial country residence. It was a truly grueling road. Hylia can finally wash herself and go to bed. Arpad is embarrassed that his fiancée is behaving too decisively. Hylia was genuinely surprised at how fresh Arpad looked. Hylia asks to be spared his jokes. They were met by a priest from a temple on the outskirts of the capital. Arpad asks to perform the wedding ceremony between them and to become a witness. Then Hylia thought that since Arpad was angry, the ritual would not take place. But Arpad intends to fully comply with the terms of her order. Arpad won't be harmed because of his status, but the lady might suffer. But if Arpad returns her now, Hylia's reputation will be ruined. The only way to save her is to get married. The priest swore that he would repay Arpad for his mother's kindness. Hylia confirmed that she agreed to marry Arpad. Therefore, the priest asks them to rise to the altar. Since there were no guests, the ceremony went by rather quickly. Before the eyes of God, they became husband and wife. The right to conclude a marriage belongs exclusively to the temple. Now they need to seal their union with a kiss. This is a mandatory part of the ritual that Hylia had not thought of. She didn't think she would have to kiss Arpad himself. It's just a plan to get Arpad on her side. After everything we've been through, any kiss doesn't matter. It's just a formality, part of the wedding ceremony. But Hylia can't help but tremble. It feels like my heart is about to jump out of my chest. Hylia did not exchange vowed kisses. This is nothing like what happened to Ludwig. It seems that Arpad has no intention of letting her go. She pulled away, saying that was enough. There is a priest here after all, and it's time to stop. Arpad suddenly asked her, as if hypnotized, who she was. He was used to restraining himself, coping with fits of rage, but the moment their lips touched, he completely lost control of himself. The beast that forever haunts him inside, his friend, fell silent. Arpad had never felt anything like this in his life. Next, we move to the capital of the empire. Evangelina greets her mother, and she is burning with curiosity. His Majesty only told them to wait. It seems he hasn't decided on the punishment yet. Ludwig knew that he was taking the side of his own son. He should refrain from speaking in a way that might incur their wrath. Ava still can't understand why Arpad chose Hylia. This is why their current actions are most important. Since their union seems ridiculous, they may fan the rumors. They need to sway public opinion to their side. It must be conveyed that this incident was merely a prank due to Arpad's madness. In this way, they will convince the people that the bark of Hylia and Louis would have taken place no matter what. After the shower, Hylia felt like she was born again. Who would have thought that a wedding ceremony could be so simple? In her past lives, her weddings were lavish and incredibly grand. But now, after this quick ceremony, Hylia feels much calmer. Hylia took the first step to cut Ludwig out of her life. Now she just has to return to the capital and deal with the consequences. She wonders how Renus is doing now. He must be tormented by the thought that the hill was taken away by force. Hylia hopes that he did not take up the sword, deciding to atone for his guilt with his own life. Annie the maid must think she's in trouble too. Hylia is worried, but it's better for them to remain ignorant. The truth would still sound absurd to them now. One can only hope that they will wait for her return to explain everything. The maids wish that this night will be the happiest for her. All this makes Hylia feel terribly embarrassed. The maids of the residence do not know that their marriage is a deal. But now, for Hylia, a pillow and a soft bed are more important. But suddenly she saw the crown prince. She doesn't understand why he's suddenly in her room. Hylia had already ordered everyone not to approach the chambers. But Arpad doesn't need a reason to spend their wedding night together. Hylia was confused, because this was not part of the terms of her order. She turned out to be more calculating than Arpad had expected. Hylia herself brought him to bed. Panic washes over her when he gets too close. Arpad asked her if she knew what a married couple did on their wedding night. Their agreement was verbal, so there was a misunderstanding. The first thing you need to do is draw up an official marriage contract. When they finished, she asked if there were any objections. Arpad was troubled by the condition that they should divorce as soon as he ascended the throne. Hylia will receive the status of empress, and there is no point in divorce. But this is how Hylia proves the purity of her intentions. But Arpad asked why she needed to prove it. She doesn't understand why Arpad isn't happy with this. In a past life, she was close to the emperor who killed Arpad. After the death of his son, the emperor, tormented by guilt, was going to lock himself in a temple. He often poured out his heart to Hylia because of his guilt. Even in her first life, Hylia heard that Arpad had a secret passion. Arpad is angry, not even suspecting Hylia's concern. Maybe she wants to be on the safe side, so she can escape at any moment. But Hylia is sure he will have to thank her later. But he may be dissatisfied, instead of grateful. If, over time, Arpad finds this clause inappropriate, they will delete it. But if he is truly grateful, he will give Hylia this country palace. This is a great success for the girl. Arpad thought she was a strange woman. At first she behaved insolently, but now she trembles at every joke. There was nothing remarkable in her past. On the day of their first meeting, Arpad scared her to death, but she didn't blink an eye. Moreover, she endured 3 days of grueling travel. In appearance, she is no different from noble ladies. Perhaps her thoughts could only be read when the matter seemed to be about Renus. If he really is her weakness, Arpad must take advantage of it. But for some reason, this only causes irritation. 3 days later, Ludwig tortures Renus. He asks him to raise his head and look at him. Ludwig was indignant at how insolently the knight looked at him. Ludwig believes that because of Renus, who failed to protect his bride, he is forced to endure shame, and Renus still has the courage to hold his head up so high. Evangeline reported that Arpad was returning to the capital with Hylia. The information was obtained by her mother's bloodhounds. Ludwig didn't think they would come back on their own. A pitiful sight that Evangeline had never seen in the original. Maybe it's a butterfly effect because she changed the plot so much. Even if the plot changed, it wouldn't affect her plan. Everything is ready to take back Hylia. Ludwig feels as if he is the true heir to the empire. From childhood, Ludwig suffered from inferiority in front of Arpad, position in the hierarchy, beauty, talents, and now Ludwig rushed to Arpad with only a burning resentment. They noticed a carriage on the road, and Ludwig ordered them to catch up with it. Arpad drove straight across the plain, not even trying to hide. This carelessness will become the cause of his death today. As Ludwig believes, he was already hoping to see Hylia in the carriage. But what was his surprise when it turned out to be empty inside? The Empress asks Eva to try a fresh herbal infusion. The more Eva thinks about it, the more anxious she becomes. According to the original, Arpad was supposed to die of insanity, but now he and Hylia were somehow married. Maybe it's because Hylia is the main character, and the story still tends to her ending. But Evangeline needs to pull herself together. If this continues, Ludwig will not receive the inheritance, and Eva's plan will fail. But what worries her more is that she can't stop thinking about Arpad, Hylia, who only knows how to cry, and Ludwig, who is devoid of any charm. When Eva had skimmed through the novel before coming here, they had irritated her. She didn't see anything special about them, but she realized firsthand that Arpad was incredibly attractive. But Eva realized that there was no way to save him from madness. That's why she gave up trying to get him. The Empress asks Eva to stop being nervous. Eva asked her mother if everything would end well. This bride kidnapping gave them a reason to act. Moreover, thanks to rumors, this couple's reputation is as bad as it gets. She asks Eva not to fill her head with nonsense. The Empress will do everything to ensure that she becomes the true ruler of the empire. Evangelina is very happy that she has it. She didn't even notice that there was now someone else's soul in her treasure. She is still a queen. You will have to rely on her. They were informed that Arpad and Hylia had arrived at the palace. The people surrounding them could not believe their eyes. Hylia hears everything they whisper. It seems that Arpad really intends to enter the city through this gate, the Gate of Glory, the main entrance to the Imperial Palace. Arpad asks the knight to skip the formalities and open the gates. The knight asks where he has been all this time, but Arpad shouldn't be made to repeat himself twice. He asked how long he intended to obstruct the passage of the Crown Prince and his wife. The result of Arpad's action exceeded all of Hylia's expectations. It's an invasion to announce that they are husband and wife. She asked how long they would be riding. Arpad wants to show Hylia to everyone, just like she asked. Hylia noticed Evangeline peeping from behind the column. Obviously, her presence alerted the girl. Perhaps Hylia is still haunted by the memory of her dying grin in her past life. Arpad asked if everything was okay, noting that Hylia was shaking. He had never seen her so pale. He hugged her even tighter, but she must not show his sweetness. She proves to him that everything is okay with her. But Arpad still pulled her closer to him. He fears that horse riding will not do her any good. Hylia didn't understand why there were these feigned tendernesses and fake words, but it turns out that Arpad noticed Ava's gaze and did it on purpose. Surprisingly, Hylia's anxiety immediately subsided. Evangeline felt like Hylia had just laughed at her. The Empress is outraged that Ludwig was unable to return his bride. I'll have to use this as an excuse to throw Hylia out of the house. She noticed that Ava still hadn't given up on her feelings. Arpad will never become a puppet, unlike Ludwig. It's just a passing fancy of youth. Arpad was always a man that no woman could have. It all seems unfair to her. And the worst part is that the plot starts to change. Previous plans will have to wait. This time, Eva will enter the game seriously. Arpad and Hylia arrive to the Emperor. Hylia greets him and introduces herself. He reminds her that Ludwig was supposed to be her husband. Her behavior towards Arpad is an insult to imperial power. But neither Hylia nor Arpad tried to disregard his will. The Emperor is ready to help if this is a kidnapping against her will. But Hylia does not want to recognize this marriage as invalid. Moreover, the wedding ceremony between them has already been performed. Hylia says they did it for love. Arpad fell in love with her at first sight and could not restrain his impulse. They announced the recreation of the legend of the princess's abduction by a dragon. But in reality, things are different. Hylia doesn't believe that Ludwig is worthy of the imperial throne. It is unlikely that the emperor would have given him power over Delphine without making him a rival to the crown prince. And Hylia asked what the emperor really knew about Ludwig. It was as if she were saying that the emperor was incapable of seeing the true essence of people. But Hylia was not close to him to judge. But she knows enough about Ludwig to declare that he is not worthy of the throne. The emperor asks her to explain her words in more detail. Ludwig is too petty to lead his subjects. Moreover, his ambitions are not backed by talent. One day, the manager embezzled some of the funds, causing everyone to become indignant. But Ludwig appointed the same man to the position the very next year. The new candidate opposed tax increases, while the previous one sided with Ludwig. Even from the affairs of a small duchy, one can understand how he will manage the fate of the empire. The emperor himself understands where such a ruler will lead the state. Hylia's beliefs are correct, but the emperor will stick to his opinion, as if he thinks such a person deserves a place on the throne. But he believes that such a ruler is better than a madman capable of murder. Now Hylia realized that he was afraid of Arpad's fits of madness. In that case, she says he has nothing to worry about. The crown prince's madness was cured the moment they met. The night before the wedding, the great Artemis himself appeared in Hylia's dream. He whispered that as long as she was near, the dragon's descendants would not know madness. But the emperor is not going to believe these tales. He asked if she was ready to swear to the truth of her words. But Hylia only made this up to convince the emperor. However, she says that Artemis himself promised to show a sign to confirm her words. Hylia asks that they be allowed to hold the wedding reception in Artanis's hall in a month and 7 days. This is a sacred place where the coronation of the emperor took place. To ask for a wedding reception in such a place is unheard of, even for a crown prince. But that's exactly why they need to hold the wedding reception there. The emperor suddenly asks Hylia to come closer. He asks her to tell the truth while she is here, inside, and no one can hear. He thinks that someone is threatening her, forcing her to say all this. But Hylia is only carrying out the orders of the great dragon. Of course, it is difficult for the emperor to accept such a proposal so immediately. His gaze was full of worry, but a spark lit up it. He is afraid that one fatal mistake will destroy the entire state. Hylia knows that he loves his son more than anything in the world, and she knows that he longs with all his heart to save him. Therefore, Helia asks for a chance to prove that Arpad can be healed. The emperor remembered how Arpad's mother asked him to save him. When this was over, the emperor agreed to hold a wedding reception. Helia thought it would be harder to convince him. Ludwig suddenly appeared, declaring how afraid he was for Helia. The last thing Helia wanted to do was meet him. Helia wanted to scream at the top of her lungs. But Arpad, who had already asked Ludwig to keep his distance, comes between them in time. Ludwig is surprised that he had the nerve to come here. He is confident that the emperor will punish him for kidnapping his wife. But Arpad asked where he saw his wife here. He squeezed his hand so hard that it hurt Ludwig. He should be ashamed to use the emperor as a cover to try to get his wife back. Arpad asked Hilly if he could break his legs, but she said that it was not worth it, because they were in the throne room. Ludwig says that His Majesty will not leave it like this, but the emperor had already allowed them to hold the wedding reception. And, if Hilya doesn't mind, Arpad will send Ludwig an invitation. Ludwig does not believe that His Majesty could do such a thing. Evangelina heard everything too. It's the first time Hilya has seen such an expression on her face. Her gaze was a mixture of disbelief and rage. This is how she looked only at the throne of the Empress in her past life. Hilya realized that Eva actually loved Arpad, not Ludwig. In her past life, Hilya asked her about this, but then her words sounded completely different. If her feelings for Arpad are sincere, Hilya does not understand why she became a victim. She said that the Emperor had blessed them by allowing them to hold the wedding reception. He must have recognized their true love. Hilya is happy and is pleased to be the first to tell Eve this news. Arpad decides to leave his wife's performance for later. Hilya asked if Arpad's hands hurt after he held her. She thanks him for everything he has done. I wonder if Arpad knows about Evangeline's feelings. Judging by the way he played along, it seemed like he didn't care about her. And I wonder who Eva is to Arpad. If she had no more questions, it was Arpad's turn to ask. He wants to know if it is true that she received Artemis's blessing. There was no mention of this in the terms of her order. Perhaps her words about Arpad becoming emperor are connected to this. Hilya says that this was, of course, a lie. In the end, everything worked out for the best possible reason. Accidental slips of the tongue must not be allowed. But Hilya does know a way to cure Arpad of his madness. Arpad suddenly asked what that scent was coming from her. He knows almost all the smells in this empire, but this one is new to him. And the problem is that it awakens strange desires in him. He had a feeling that he wanted to eat her. Hilya thought it was another fit of rage. You can't give in to his desires. You need to pull yourself together. Hilya jokes that she didn't know he was also a cannibal. He will soon be emperor, and it would be embarrassing if such rumors began to spread about him. He asked whether this very love was received only from subjects. If he manages the empire well, he will receive the love of other countries. But Arpad said that he was not only a prince, but also her husband. That's why he can't leave his wife without love. Arpad is interested in how Hilya intends to show devotion to her husband, and everyone considers them a model couple, so they cannot behave aloofly. From now on, Arpad asks her to tell only the truth. He wants her to promise that curing him of his madness and Artanis's blessing are not connected in any way. He needs to find out Hilly's secrets, as if she's hiding something. Hilya said there was definitely no connection. It was just a fiction to gain the Emperor's recognition. But how she plans to reveal Artanis's sign is already a secret. Arpad asked if she had anything that she wouldn't call a secret. But this is also part of her little secret. Women who have a lot of secrets are not his type. Yet Hilya cannot admit that she died tragically in past lives. After all, a husband should also trust his wife. After Hilya left, the Emperor asked if Arpad really believed her. The Emperor does not understand how he could commit such an absurd act without even knowing Hilya. Arpad felt that if she was around, he wouldn't end up like his mother. Realizing the riskiness of the undertaking, he went ahead with it. A few days later, the ladies discussed how Hilya was more capable than they thought. The Countess was asked what she thought about this. Viscountess Edith Falerne replied that she had not thought about it. She doesn't want to blurt out too much, so as not to get into trouble. Since the Emperor acknowledged Hilya, they shouldn't just call her Lady Delphine. Evangelina asked how they should address her in that case. Her mother is not feeling well today, so Eva will be receiving them. First, she asks the Countess to answer her question. Edith thinks they should call Hilya the Crown Princess. Evangelina said it was a complete disgrace. She doesn't like that everyone is ready to recognize her as the Crown Princess. The other ladies are unhappy that Edith was going to call the Hilya that in front of Ludwig. His Majesty the Emperor did not give public consent. The Empress does not favor those who try to curry favor with the powers that be. But Edith was simply wondering what would be an appropriate address. This is a misunderstanding, and that is not what she meant. She is captured, but Edith asks for a chance to explain herself to the Empress. Evangelina asks to eliminate this noise. The other ladies asked how Ludwig was doing. Mother is very worried that Ludwig has a deep wound in his heart. She would hardly be able to honor them with her presence at the celebration in Artanis's hall. There is no point in going where the queen is not. In high society, there will be ladies who will dare to go there. As Arpad had requested earlier, his butler studied the trends in trade. But now Arpad was thinking about something completely different. Hylia seems too mysterious to him. It irritates him how she hides behind jokes, concealing the truth. However, Arpad doesn't even have the desire to get rid of her. Julkin asked Arpad what exactly seemed strange to him. He realized that his report had flown past Arpad's ears. Arpad asks him to repeat it. But he still told Yulkin to call Hylia Crown Princess, although the Emperor has not yet given orders to call her that. Yulkin thinks that Arpad kidnapped Hylia not because of an order, but because he fell in love with her at first sight. Arpad allows for this possibility. Julkin asks that his resignation be accepted, as Arpad must have gone completely mad. But Arpad took and burned his petition. He knows that Yulkin will write something new anyway. Yulkin thinks that the lady used some kind of magic, since Arpad decided to hold the ceremony in Artanis's hall. To Yulkin, it sounds like Hylia has hypnotized him, but he promises to serve her until they understand everything. For now, he can call Hylia his mistress. Arpad asked him to call her whatever he felt most comfortable with. Hylia asks Edith to calm down. The Viscountess is confused and doesn't know what to do now. Hylia assures that the queen will definitely forgive her. This is the same woman who betrayed Hylia in her past life. In all her past lives, she always trembled before Evangeline's wrath. When Hylia supported her, Edith wanted to be friends with her. But it was a trap. In fact, she was Evangeline's spy. She leaked all the information about Hylia to Evangeline. Even now, these tears of gratitude are exactly the same as then. It seemed that Ava had really gotten to her this time. In this life, Hylia invites her to become friends. Hylia has no friends at all and would be happy to make friends with her. Hylia asked Arpad if he had found out that she liked smart men with glasses. He himself urgently called her, and now he sits here like a model. He uses his charm too often. He has a book about the Empire in his hand and stops at his favorite passage. The dragon spoke of the bride as if she were a beautiful flower. Having seen her, he realized that only she could fill the void in his soul, and he is unable to resist the burning desire to possess her. Hylia didn't know Arpad was such a romantic. She didn't even notice that he had been staring at her for some time. Arpad loved these lines since childhood. He always dreamed of having such a person in his life, a beautiful woman who can save him from madness. And if she turns out to be nearby, then he, like Artanis, will be able to recognize her, or he will hate her for the long wait. But now Arpad feels that they have already met. Perhaps he guessed that Hylia was the very bride who could tame the dragon's madness. Either the dragon was captivated by the maiden's beauty and wishes to make her his wife, or he intends to devour the valuable prey. Essentially, two reasons stem from the dragon's bride. It is capable of increasing the dragon's strength and strengthening the beast's raft. Some took her as a life partner, others devoured her to absorb her power. Artanis did not give up trying to get Estrid. She was so important to him that he was ready to burn the whole world. Hylia only learned about this in her third life. Arpad, who became Ludwig's victim, was also there. At that time, the attention of the head of the Magic Tower was focused on Arpad. Hylia became expendable in his research. Gaspar, the head of the tower, told her that Arpad had never attacked her, which meant she had magical powers, all because she is the very part that he needs. Unlike the others, whom he tore to pieces, he left Hylia alive. But his instincts must push him to devour Hylia for power. Thanks to her, Gaspar understood how the princess managed to survive next to the dragon. He called Hylia the dragon's bride. Hylia knows she can use life as leverage in negotiations with Arpad. After all, in his past life, he didn't attack her, even when he completely lost his mind. Moreover, Hylia was the first to speak about the dragon's bride. She wondered what she should do in this situation. Hylia decided she wasn't going to just run away. She was afraid that Arpad was having a seizure, but this was not the case. He asked her what she would do in such a situation, but Hylia replied that it was not for her to decide. Only Arpad has the power to choose what his feelings are for such a person. Arpad noticed how cleverly she always avoided answering, but Hylia simply hadn't answered it yet. Arpad replied that he would most likely hate it. Having fallen in love with a person at first sight, he will lose control of his heart. Hylia hopes he won't hate her since she isn't that person. Hylia didn't close her eyes all night. It's good that the maids don't understand anything. The crown prince told her to get news from the Dolphin Mansion through the maid Essia. They say that no one there cares about the maid Annie. Ludwig gave the order to send Sir Renus to prison. We need to get them out of there before something irreparable happens. Hylia asks to send people there and pick up Annie and Renus. Essia asked if the crown prince had given his approval for this. Hylia asked who she served. Essia said that he ordered her to serve Hylia. Realizing that she was the crown prince's man, Hylia asked her to return to her master. Hylia does not need to ask Arpad's permission to handle the affairs of her own house. She asked the other maids to bring Annie and Renus here. Hylia has more important things to do now. The Queen and Evangeline have effectively declared war. Therefore, Hylia must gather her allies as quickly as possible and crush them. Edith will do her best to persuade others to come to the celebration. Hylia told her that she really was her only friend. If Edith starts begging everyone to come, the prestige of the event will collapse. But this is to their advantage, so Hylia asks to tell as many people as possible. Edith noticed the crown princess's personal seal. Their marriage is not yet recognized, but Arpad has allowed her to use the seal. Hylia asks Edith to listen to her ideas and then tell her what she thinks of them. Evangeline learned that Hylia had used the seal without permission. Edith conveyed that the crown prince had given her permission to use it, but only His Majesty the Emperor can give permission. Edith said that Hylia was afraid the hall would be empty. They say she wants to spread the rumor that the Emperor himself will honor her with his presence. If the reception fails, she will never achieve recognition as crown princess. Ava noted that Hylia had at least tried to think, but soon, Hylia will find herself in the same position as the piece of paper in Eva's hands. The closer the reception got, the more rumors and ridicule there were about Hylia. Everyone was talking about how desperate she was to realize that no one would recognize her. The Marchioness of Quinnable suddenly announced a ball that same day. She was allowed to hold the celebration in the second largest hall. If this continues, the reception of Hylia and Arpad will become a laughingstock. Edith assures that she will distribute invitations even more diligently. Now Ava and the Queen are thinking how stupid Hylia is, but her bait worked much better than she expected. The maids then reported that they had failed to retrieve Annie and Renus. They apologized for not being able to carry out the order. As long as Ludwig sits in the mansion and plays pranks on the owner, the butlers will never obey. So Hylia's driving away of Isha still bore fruit. First, we need to sort out the affairs at the Dolphin Mansion. If she doesn't get her own house in order, she will be told she is not worthy of the title of Crown Princess. Hylia needs to change her clothes and go to His Highness. Arpad's butler asked if he would really leave everything as it was. Lady Dolphin openly drove his man away. But if she knows who to throw out, then she deserves to be Crown Princess. Arpad is sure that she could have become Empress. Soon the Hylia came to visit him. She undoubtedly came with a request that His Highness sort things out for her. If she starts throwing herself at the prince now, Yulkin will resign. But she came to warn that Arpad would sleep alone that night. Hylia needs to visit her father's house. She needs to rein in the servants a little. Hylia whispered something else in his ear. She also asks to have a good night without her. Yulkin didn't expect such closeness between them. He asked Arpad where he was going, but he is not obliged to report to him about his every step. Yulkin thought that he followed the lady. Hylia thanks the one who readily accepted her order. It turned out to be Arpad, masquerading as the king of mercenaries, Gerald, a magical artifact in the form of a mask that hides his appearance. Arpad is disappointed in Hylia, but he seems to have had high hopes. Apparently, he was disappointed that she asked for help with family matters. Hylia couldn't help but know, because this wasn't the first time he'd tested her. Arpad must have been keeping an eye on her to see if she was worth the price she paid for the order. Hylia asks him not to be disappointed ahead of time. She did not ask His Highness for help. Before her now is the king of mercenaries, not Arpad. He knows very well how important it is to fight for the right to justification. Neither Gerald nor the Black Squad had shown any activity lately. Hylia will order mercenaries and solve family problems, and at the same time help spread the exploits of the king of mercenaries. Arpad will bring about the downfall of his opponent, and Gerald will get a heroic story. Hylia handed him victory on a silver platter, but it was up to him to decide what to do. The butler asks Ludwig to come to his senses. Ludwig believes that everyone sees him as a pathetic creature whose wife was stolen. He is drunk, and the butler asks him to stop. He even ignored the young lady's order and will carry out Ludwig's order. Ludwig asked Hylia to come herself if she needed Annie and Renus. He hoped that the butler would not go over to Hylia's side. In the end, the dolphin family name depends on Hylia. Neither Eva nor the queen will accept anyone who betrays them even once. The butler took this position thanks to Evangeline. Now he has nowhere to run. A maid bursts into the room. She said that Lady Hylia had arrived. The butler informed her that Ludwig was now in his chambers. But Hylia says she didn't come to see him. The butler suggested that she should apologize to him. He asks her to think about the Duke's feelings. His bride was kidnapped in front of everyone. It would be fair if Hylia apologized. Hylia became furious and asked the butler to be put on his knees. She told Fulman he was wrong about everything. And Hylia asks to be called Crown Princess. Fulman was only concerned about the Duke's well-being. Hylia asks the mercenaries she hired to take control of the mansion. The maids said they were not guilty of anything. It's unlikely that Fulman is the only one who has gone over to the side of Eva and the Queen. Hylia asks that everyone be taken away and locked in the dungeon. When Annie showed up, Hylia asked if she was okay. The fact that she is alive is enough. Annie said that Renus was badly injured, so Hylia asked to be taken to where he was. Seeing her, Renus was glad that she was okay. Hylia had no idea that the wounds would be so serious. She asked if Renus could move on his own. Even though Renus said everything was fine, he was still in pain. Judging by his wounds, he needs to hurry or he will die. Hylia asks to take him to the healer. When they left, she asked Arpad if he knew about it. He had to tell her that Renus was in such a state. He was alive, so Arpad only reported the most important things. But Hylia asked that his condition be checked and reported to her. But demanding that her husband take care of her lover's well-being is too much for Arpad. But Renus is not her lover, and with such statements, Arpad only insults him. For someone who denied it, Hylia rushed towards the knight too quickly, and her words about being indifferent to him sound unconvincing. If something happens to Renus because of this misunderstanding, she will not forgive him. When Hylia returned, Ludwig was glad to see her. He was told that she was driving them all out of here. But Ludwig suddenly asked if Hylia had always been such a beauty. Annie noticed how drunk he was. She asks him to leave, but Ludwig said that this is their home. Hylia said that this was her home, and they had nothing else to do here. She has already become the wife of the crown prince. And then she said that she had already become his daughter-in-law. Ludwig screams that Hylia is only his. Arpad couldn't stand it anymore and attacked Ludwig. Ludwig continues to shout that Hylia is his woman. Arpad is ready to finish him off right now. He should also have that filthy tongue ripped out. Hylia asked him to stop and he had no choice. One of the servants was indignant at how he dared to touch the Grand Duke. For a moment, Arpad lost his composure. The Duke fainted. He was in deep shock. Since their guest was tired and fell asleep, it was time to prepare the carriage. She asks to see his lordship out. The servants do not understand how one can be so cruel to the Duke. But now there is nothing connecting Hylia and Ludwig. Because of him, she couldn't even take her people. The punishment for insulting the imperial family is beheading, and since this man insulted her highness with his language, then he must be removed. Hylia asks to drag this servant after her, and after that, she asks to calm down this screamer. Hylia asks him to scream as much as he wants. After all, these are the last sounds he will make with his tongue. Hylia could very well silence him without cutting out his tongue. Using a magical artifact, she will cast a curse. After this, Hylia asks to take him to a doctor so that he does not die. She asked the servants if there was anyone else who wanted to insult her. Hylia needs to get the estate in order quickly. Word of this incident will spread quickly. She asks the servants to give her a written report of the crimes committed against the House of Delphine. Those who provide valuable information can expect leniency. There must be a reward for personal participation at such a personal hour. An hour later, she told Arpad that he could laugh at her as much as he wanted. But he asked why he should laugh. Hylia asked to look at the mountain of confessions, all because Hylia was unable to properly manage the internal affairs of the house. But Arpad doesn't want to laugh at her at all. Hylia will not tolerate ridicule about this situation from now on. Arpad wonders if the artifact can really cast curses. Is it really possible to impose a curse, including such specific conditions? Hylia smiled, saying that it was a blatant lie. It's just a trinket, just say the word and it will flutter its wings. Hylia chose the color red to set the atmosphere. And yet this thing is infinitely dear to her. Hylia blackmailed them using the memory of her mother. She thought Arpad was disappointed, but he was impressed. It looked as daring as putting on a show in front of the emperor. This is about the incident when they were having an audience. Arpad assumed her mother would be delighted. Since she used her for a purpose, she could be satisfied. But Hylia's mother is long dead, and she has no idea what she would want. But for some reason, these stupid words bring her comfort. The next day, Ludwig woke up with a headache. He was informed that he was in his mansion. Evangeline entered and gave him a hot slap in the face. She asked if he understood what he had done. Ludwig is indignant at what he did. After what happened, he started calling for Hylia. The servants tried to drag him away from the door. Ludwig hopes it was just drunken delirium, but he deliberately did not want to leave his bride's former home. Rumors of his indecent behavior have already spread everywhere. If His Majesty and the Queen find out, he's finished. And Evangelina began to compare them more and more often. And that's why she feels even more sick that Hylia is now next to Apart. Ludwig is already just a member of a collateral branch with dubious rights to the throne. Evangeline was already thinking about just leaving him. But she can't get rid of him that easily because he is the main character. The remaining belongings of his lordship are taken from the Dolphin Mansion. Since the engagement was broken, Hylia ordered them to be returned to their owner. Evangelina remembers that the mansion is full of her things. Theft of private property by Dolphin and illegal seizure of land is a very bad reason to take risks. Hylia said that she ordered Ludwig and Eva's things to be returned to them. Such a man should never become emperor. Arpad asked if she wasn't offended. Arpad cemented the image of a capable heir. But Hylia will still be seen as a pawn. Although, this was Hylia's plan, so she has a right to be angry. But for Hyli, it's all just to his advantage. She must hide in his shadow for a while. In the end, Arpad knows the truth of her plan. And this is quite enough for Hylia. Later, Edith reveals that Eva was stabbed in the heart. She even burst into tears in the Queen's salon. A few days ago, there was a reception at the Imperial Palace. There, Eva played the victim, pretending that Hylia had betrayed her. It seems she really managed to evoke pity. Although, Hylia's blow clearly got her angry. Edith asked how Hylia could hide such important events from her. It seemed that Eva scolded her for Edith's failure to find out anything about Delphine's house. Hylia said she had no choice. It was His Highness's order. Edith thought that now Hylia had to take responsibility. Like she should personally offer to make peace with Evangeline. Edith thought that the word reconciliation was not the most appropriate here. She believes that Hylia herself should apologize since she started this mess. Hylia can't take it anymore. She imagined herself suddenly pouring her tea on Edith. I wanted to say that she heard such nonsense, which is why her hand allegedly slipped. In fact, she really wanted to throw out this tea. But one cannot act so recklessly for the sake of momentary pleasure. She can't waste time on such things now. Hylia remembered a far more important person she had to find. Evangeline was shocked to hear that Hylia would apologize to her, although she hasn't talked about it yet. Hylia beat around the bush, but never gave a clear answer. And then she threw Edith out altogether, declaring that she was tired. Evangeline pours tea on Elite, thinking she is making fun of her. Until Hylia apologizes, Eva asks Edith not to appear in her presence. Hylia met with Secretary Felix. They somehow talked before the regression, but this is the first time they greet each other properly. In her past lives, Felix's end was quite sad. He never recognized Ludwig as the crown prince. Hylia was so frightened that she could not utter a word in response. But looking at Felix, Hylia found comfort in him. His screams continued until his head was cut off. It seemed as if Hylia wanted to tell him something. Felix asked why she was looking at him so intently. Hylia asks him to relax. In fact, she has one task for him. He encouraged Asura to speak ill of her. This is because in his eyes, Hylia is not worthy of the title of crown princess. Felix said that the maid was already undergoing retraining, and they barely exchanged a few words. But even now, he does not call Hylia Her Highness. She gives him something and asks him to look at it. Hylia offers the secretary a bet. She bets $1 million that after reading these documents, he will start calling Hylia Her Highness. Felix knows that she has not yet received the right to manage the crown princess's treasury, so he wonders where she will get such an impressive sum. Hylia said she had that kind of money. She asked again whether he accepted the bet or not. Meanwhile, in the house of the Dolphin estate, the night Renus woke up. Hylia told him to go to the palace. Felix hopes that after reading this, she will still tell him how she will pay off such a sum. Contrary to rumors, Hylia single-handedly cleaned up the mansion. The young duchess is much more capable than Felix assumed. But if he doesn't want to, Hylia asks to give the documents back. But Felix didn't say he was refusing the bet. He will have to figure out the details himself. Felix's eyes lit up, and he immediately called Hylia Her Highness. If they had this data earlier, Feeding the information would have been much easier. Felix asked why she was still holding out her hand to him. They made a bet, and now Hylia is waiting for her million. Soon Felix was going to tell Arpad something. He is completely captivated by her highness. Arpad doesn't even recognize him. Felix regrets how blind he was to not have noticed Hylia before. Arpad didn't expect that she would be able to get Yolkin himself. She was able to identify spies that even Felix could not find. Such knowledge could mean that she is part of the Queen's inner circle. But Felix thinks this is nonsense. If she were on the Queen's side, it would be more advantageous for her to marry Ludwig. It doesn't compare to Ludwig's accession to the throne. Moreover, Hylia confidently stated that she could tame Arpad's madness. No matter how much Arpad thinks, he thinks what an incomprehensible woman she is. Felix also thinks that her highness really likes him. Her gaze was warm. She treated him to expensive sweets. Suddenly, Arpad declares that he refuses. He asks Felix to throw all the reports in the trash. He used to say that they could be served like this. Arpad orders to return immediately and write everything from scratch. Renus blamed himself for failing to protect Hylia. If Hylia makes him her knight, she won't have to worry about him anymore. Arpad asked where she was going with such a beautiful outfit. She looks like she's getting ready for a dinner party. Arpad asks Hylia for the honor of being her escort. She said that her hand belonged only to him. Hylia felt how hard he squeezed her hand. Arpad asked if she knew how many men she had. Hylia didn't understand the meaning of these sudden accusations. Arpad's jokes are becoming too cutting. Arpad doesn't like the knight who dared to draw his sword in his presence. As soon as Renus appeared, Hylia rushed towards him. But Arpad grabbed her, not allowing her to move. But he is her legal husband and has the right to be jealous. He is the only one with whom Hylia is connected by marriage. It sounds like an unfaithful wife making excuses to her husband. Renus kneels down in front of her. The sword and life of the knight Renus belong now and forever to Hylias. Hylia could guess why he had suddenly decided to swear allegiance to her. Renus is sure that she was kidnapped and forced into marriage. Arpad corrected him that she was not a lady, but a crown princess. Disregarding the title is an insult to his wife. This worthless swordsman will do whatever Hylia commands. Renus committed the greatest sin when he failed to protect her. His mark of shame is that he missed her that day. But she not only forgave his mistake, but also personally rescued him from prison. Renus is ready to swear any oath and give everything for Hylia. Hylia realized that he truly intended to save her. Arpad thinks he swore to rescue the princess from the clutches of the dragon. Hylia cannot admit that the kidnapping was staged. She thanks His Highness for his concern. Hylia's teeth ache at the saccharine quality. She didn't expect to be so close to Arpad. He hopes that she will not limit herself to just words of gratitude. They still need to play the role of loving spouses. After the kiss, she was surprised that he was grinning like that. Arpad pulled her closer and kissed her again. Hylia feels a little awkward in front of Renus. She won't let Arpad take control of the situation. For a pure man like Renus, this was too much. Hylia thought that was enough to be grateful. Renus asked in surprise if Hylia really loved Arpad. She replied that she loved him with all her heart and soul. Hylia was glad that he believed her without further ado. Arpad grants the Crown Princess's Knight the title of Knight of the Imperial Guard. He asks Renus to serve her faithfully. Soon, Felix brought a report about the people Arpad had asked to find. He had to rewrite everything from scratch. Hylia didn't expect that he would anger Arpad to such an extent. Felix asks why Hylia needs information about this man. Evangeline is not just a beautiful flower for high society. She uses her time travel abilities to manipulate people from all walks of life. And to counter her, Hylia needs a flawless plan.